Hey family, how are you? This is Leontine, Black History 365. Want to share a little bit about the importance of education, but maybe not in the traditional way, more of traveling. Getting in your little car and traveling somewhere to get your education. I think that's one of the best ways to learn about yourself, to learn about people, um, to learn about our environment, our differences, our similarities. Travel. Some people like to travel, some people don't, but I love to travel. And it doesn't mean that it has to be, a big, huge trip somewhere. It could just be in your local community where you can learn about the history of your community, the people, um, their connection to you, their connection to African American history. So when we talk about travel and education um, and the black consumer, the African American dollar, most of the people that I know, my friends, my family, they do a lot of traveling. But let me share a story about my father, and it will take us to the book that I'm going to recommend. My father was not really big on traveling. His adventures were going places in West Virginia, so we knew that our vacation was going primarily to be someplace local. And when I mean local, I mean traveling from Piedmont to Charleston to the basketball tournament. And if we were lucky, we might be able to go to Blackwater Falls in West Virginia. So we didn't travel a lot. My mother would take us to Baltimore. We would visit relatives in Baltimore. But this is what I wanted to share about my dad and men like him during the period of time. Whenever we would get in the car with my father, he had so much stuff in the car: survival gear, thermoses, food, covers, weapons, so much stuff in the car that we couldn't fit. And I would say, Daddy, how are we going to get in here? But what I didn't realize at the time was that he was a man that could not just travel freely. He was born during a time that you couldn't just get in your car as an African American person and travel freely throughout the United States or even throughout your region. It meant that you could face danger. White people would terrorize you. I mean, even traveling from Piedmont, West Virginia to Cumberland, Maryland, 30 miles away, or to any points, really, you could be stopped. You definitely couldn't stop and ask for any directions because you didn't feel safe. So he'd say, I have to have all those provisions in my car. He even had tools in the car for, in case his car broke down. He said, because I can't ask anyone. I have to be self-sufficient out here with my travel. And, that's a terrible burden to place upon someone. You just want to get in your car, go travel, go somewhere, and arrive safely. The other thing is that, even if he wanted to do that, there were hotels that he couldn't check into. So if he didn't know someone, he might have to sleep in his car. This just wasn't my father. It was black people, period. There is a new movie out called The Green Book. And I haven't seen it yet, but I asked some of my friends if they'd seen it with Mahershala Ali. And they said it really isn't about the Green Book. It's more about the relationship between the two men. But I actually have, of course, a copy of the book that I found in my travels called The Green Book. And The Green Book was written by Mr. Green. And it wasn't because the color was green. It was written by Mr. Green from New York, and his name was Victor Hugo Green. He was born in 1892 and died in 1960. And the reason that he wrote the Green Book for African American travelers, it was first published in 1954, so just a few years before I was born. And it was for safe travel, not just domestically through the United States, but also internationally. Safe places, hotels and gas stations and boarding homes where and restaurants where black people would be respected and they could safely stop there on their passage, on their vacation, or just in their travel. That hasn't been that long ago. And when you think about traveling and discrimination, I call this system what it is, a wicked system. Anytime you won't let someone stay, now we do now because we recognize the power of the black consumer and the dollar. But back then, if you didn't have this Green Book, you didn't really know where to stay. And so the way that individuals were able to access the book, the Esso stations. Remember the Esso stations? If you're old enough, you probably do. But they were the station, and they would franchise. That's Mr. Green there. They would franchise their stations to African Americans, as well as distribute the book there. So you could pick up the Green Book at the Esso station, or you could order it. And many people ordered it if they were going to travel, so that they could be safe. So all of the states were listed in here. And it says, to carry your Green Book with you. So if you were traveling in Maryland, West Virginia, Michigan, it didn't matter. Even San Jose, Central America, Canada, Bermuda, Mexico, the Caribbean, it told us where we could stay. It even listed facts about where you were going. So if you were going to Bermuda, some facts about what to do, what not to do, to be safe. And it's really interesting that there really aren't that many places. So if you look, for example, let me look at, I don't know, let me just pick some place kind of random here. If you went further north, there seemed to be more places, of course, because it was larger. But let's just look at Maryland. So, for example, here were the places in Maryland, and you might have 12 places, you see, to stay. Wasn't that many opportunities to stay places. So, in Baltimore, Annapolis, Cumberland, if you could stay in Cumberland at the Glenwood Manor, which was on Glenwood Street. And in Frederick, you could stay. There were 2 places in Frederick that you could stay. So 1 or 2 places. So as I say, I think it's important. I'm glad that we have changed the laws. And that was one of the things, public accommodations, that during the Civil Rights era, the civil rights advocates said we need to have safe and fair accommodations. So if I'm coming to your town, I should be able to safely come in, order a meal, and safely depart. And that was not the case. And in some cases, it still isn't. We still have to be careful. But I would encourage everyone in your family to start early with travel, to introduce your children to travel. It can be local, regional, national, and then international. It broadens your horizons. And then if you have youngsters in your community, encourage them to do exchange programs and to do study abroad programs. I had the opportunity when I was young. I did a study abroad program in Costa Rica. And while I was living with my Costa Rican family, they took me to a place called Limon in Costa Rica. And that's where the really brown Costa Ricans. It was a beautiful place, and it was a wonderful experience for me. And then later on, I did, a European exchange program in college. Traveling helps you to connect and become an international citizen. So I'll say that, travel. Don't be like my dad and put everything in the car, but do have some survival things in your car because you just never know. Go out, have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.